You ready, Bob? Let's rock and roll. Okay, welcome to and thank you to the school board for joining us here this evening. This is a work session, a joint work session between the Poquoson School Board and the Poquoson City Council. Tonight is Monday, December the 11th. We're here, we had kicked off a discussion September, October, to talk about school consolidation given the declining enrollment of the time when and we asked to go about this in basically a twofold approach, right? The school board was going to go off and look at the need for, or the lack of need for, a school consolidation. And council at the same time went off and looked at our financial position with our financial advisors. And all of this leading into the next year of 2018, early 2018, trying to put the capital improvements plan in a usable position. Something that the council in my time has always used as a guide, but not as truly a plan. So our goal here is to get to a plan, and the first part of that was what the school board did. And so we're here tonight to receive that report from Steve, and we appreciate everybody coming together. We appreciate the work that's gone into it. Without further ado, Steve, I'll let you talk to what y'all come to find out.
Just a logistical note, the microphones are on push to talk this evening. They're frozen in that position. We couldn't do it the other way. So if you want to talk, please push the button. I'm sure when you're done.
Great, Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you all for the opportunity, and thank you, school board members, for being here. But 3.5 months ago, you asked us to make a recommendation about the need to consolidate or not consolidate. And I'm pleased to tell you the board has really taken its role seriously and moved judiciously through a process. And it will not surprise anybody here. Dr. Parrish and her staff have done a great job providing information for our decision. We continued to work through the process, and through the process we asked for more information and received more information. We worked through the various consolidation options and the capital costs to the community, and we have studied and discussed enrollment trends, including 10-year projections. And I'm pleased to say that the 10-year projections for enrollment in our school system look really good and helped us with this decision. But first and foremost, we talked about how we can continue to provide the best education possible for our students in Poquoson. We were happy to see the projected enrollment increases and some of the other information that we received, but we remained very cognizant and respected the financial parameters of the city, because we know that's important in this decision. At our last work session on November 28th, the decision was made by majority consent that we do not consolidate. And the school board is ready to dive into the next steps, considering what we have to do and all the things we have to do to renovate the middle school. But we know there's a lot of work to do before we can provide guidance in that direction. But Dr. Parrish, as I said, the staff are really amazing. And we have some of the information that we considered just to give to you tonight. And Dr. Parrish is going to walk through that with you.
Thank you, Mr. Cast. What I'm just going to do is just provide a couple of slides to provide the context for the decision that the school board made. This is the 10-year projection that was done by the Weldon Cooper Center. And what you can see here on the very bottom right-hand corner is it's predicted 10 years from now that we'll have 2,571 students. Remember that our highest enrollment to date was 2,602 students back in 2006. So what this shows us is that we're actually going to increase our enrollment and get almost up to the point where we were at our highest enrollment back in 2006. Do know that I spoke personally with a researcher who does the projections for us from Weldon Cooper Center, and also we went back and looked at the projections the Weldon Cooper Center had done for us at the 5-year mark over a couple of different school years to see how consistent they were in their projections. They've always been conservative, so we've actually always had more students than what they projected even during our enrollment decrease time. So again, that was important information for the school board, but this was really a driving force in terms of making that consolidation decision. And I have to say, back in 2012, when the consolidation committee came together, the decision was made then to wait until 2016. We waited until 2017 to see what our enrollment would really look like and what might happen in the future. So it was absolutely the right decision to make, because this is the first year that we've seen any kind of enrollment increase, and now that trend will continue. So certainly, if any of the former consolidation committee members are listening, again, a wonderful decision, because we waited long enough to really see what would happen with us. Next here, this was a big consideration for the school board, and I know you've seen copies of the presentations that I've done at the school board meeting. And for those of you who might be watching on TV, please remember that we still have our school consolidation website up. If you just go to our website, look under school board, and you can listen to and see all the presentations that I did at every work session during the course of the fall. So this is not nearly to the level of detail that each of those presentations were. But what you see here are the costs of the 5 consolidation scenarios. So these were the different options that we looked at in terms of ways that we could consolidate if we chose to do so. You see here in every option, it would require capital work on a building. So whether we decided to take the primary school out of service or the middle school out of service, we would have to do capital work, because there simply is not enough room for us just to shift students among schools now. Obviously, with the increase in enrollment, that would be a greater issue for us. We ran these numbers off of, in terms of creating this consolidation, these scenarios, off the 2006 enrollment numbers to say if we grew, what would we need in terms of facility space. So that was also important for us in running these numbers. You'll notice under PMS renovation, what we chose to run was with the number for modernization, which was the 3rd option out of 5, just to pick the median one to say if we were going to need to do renovation, let's pick the median one to run these numbers. So what you can see across the bottom is in all cases, we're over $20 million, well over $20 million in some cases, to do the work, the capital work that would need to be done to facilitate the consolidation. Note that we took into account or provided information for the school board that the Davenport company, I know we have a representative here today, when he presented to you all, when you looked at CIP costs, and as Mayor Hunt said, looking at financial matters, that in order to be within your financial guidelines, you could borrow up to $23 million. So that was taken into consideration, and what you see here is there's actually not a scenario that comes in under 23 million. So again, that was a driving force in this decision as well. The other one question that came up for us that we presented at the November meeting, 28th meeting, was estimated costs for working on the middle school, the 5 different options, but what the board asked for was an update. What would it cost to do this in 2017? Because remember, the facility study was done in the 2012-2013 year, so those cost estimates for the 5 different options had not been updated since then. So this is what you see here. So as you may remember, and I know I talked about this a little bit in our joint meeting on August 15th, was we have from immediate repairs, which is now over $5 million. That was a over $4 million number when it was given to us in 2012, 2013, and it ranges all the way up to replacing the middle school. So realizing the replacement, that would be taking down all of the middle school structures and building a new school. The reconstruction plan is taking down the oldest section, leaving the other sections up. And then the modernization plan, or you have 3 and 3A, then is to completely modernize and renovate the building. I put down here the square footage of the current building, and also when we looked at when these options were run back in 2012, 2015, the architects that did that work ran it with 600 students. And note that that is under the 10-year projection. In the 10 years, Weldon Cooper Center is projecting that we'll have 678 students. So just a note, back in 2008, we had actually trailers at the middle school, a trailer with 2 classrooms, so they were already over capacity back then. Needless to say, with the enrollment decrease, that's since left the property. Just to give a sense of, since we had talked about modernization being the median one in the middle, just to give some concept of what that means. It means that all aspects of the building would be addressed. So this includes finishes, bringing the facility up to current code and ADA compliance. That building is grandfathered on that, but once we do any real work, we will have to update it so that we're ADA compliant in every area. It would be repairing and replacing building systems. So as you may remember, when you went on the tour, we showed you where we see our electrical systems, some of our HVAC systems. Those would be either replaced or repaired. And then also working on the building, so we might be able to see some more energy savings while still meeting our educational needs, to include the needs for technology. I think it's important to note that modernization on a building includes work on the existing building, but may include some new construction attached to that building, or you may take down small sections of the building. So I know there continues to be discussion about the auditorium. So it could be the auditorium could be changed and made larger to address and better support the school and other potential community needs. And the same about the back of the building, where the locker rooms and those public restrooms are in the back. I know we talk a lot or hear a lot about the fact that there's some desire to maybe create some facility space that would enhance when we have community groups and the schools playing on the football field. So a modernization could actually include part of that as well. One thing, too, I meant to mention, sorry to go back, but realize that from option 3 all the way through 5, costs do include the leasing of trailers, because we would need to move students out of the building during much of that construction work. So I just want you to know that is included in those costs, in case you wondered. So I just stand here before you, leaving it to you, but here are some possible next steps for us. The school division, at some point, if we're going to do major work on the middle school, needs to do an educational programming study. This is always a study that's done before any of the A&E work is done. It's a fairly low-cost study that an architectural firm can do. Likely the one that's been working with us would be able to very easily do this for us. Also, there may be some interest in getting just a general timeline from start to finish, going out to bid for your A&E work all the way through the end, just to give folks a sense of how long does this work do, whether it's a minor renovation, a major renovation, or a new building. And then also, we know that we are forwarding our CIP to you all in the coming weeks. What we could do is place on that CIP now the different costs for the different middle school options. We've left that blank, saying, work to be done on this area, so at least that would be available to you as you look at that CIP. And I would envision, of course, I know there'll be discussion tonight, but I would suspect we'd see another joint meeting as part of that capital plan improvement process. So that is my very brief presentation, but again and again to the community, please don't hesitate to see the very detailed ones online.
Okay, thanks very much, Jennifer, and really appreciate both the staff and the school board's hard work on this, and the speed at which you went through it. Okay, and I don't mean that in any derogatory way. The speed that you went through it was at a pace that provided us an answer, and I don't think that you shortcut the process in any way as you went through that. So appreciate, and that's why I say the staff, it was filling in the blanks for you quickly and getting us the answer. And I would be the first one to be remiss in saying that I'm not surprised by the answer. I'm glad that we did the thing, and actually I'm quite pleased that the things that we've done as a city in the last 6 or 7 years have generated enough interest in the city that we are able to stay in the 4 schools. So, it makes it easier for the community to avoid that churn, and now to take on as a city, what do we need to do to stay in those 4 schools? So I'm very pleased with the outcome, and I'm glad that we did the study as well. So The next steps that I see, while you're, yes, and certainly, Jennifer, please bring us these costs, and Randy will incorporate those into our CIP study. But I actually think that the next step, as we had talked about, we need your answer so that council can go off and do their answers. Our next step really begins in earnest next year with the kickoff of a very busy capital improvements plan season. And Randy, I would like to kick that off by starting with a offsite for council. I would like the school chair to attend in case we have any questions that came out of your study. And the process from there will be that we authorize the Planning Commission to kick off into a very public process on that. So I'd like the Planning Commission chair to attend that as well, so that they understand what council's saying, what we're directing, and the Planning Commission will start off with the CIP in earnest. In the meantime, council can go through the various options, kind of pick where we all lie with, as far as our preliminary thoughts on this, and start to offer Randy some direction. Because one of the things that we'll all recall is that when Davenport brought us the options for financing, a lot of those started with what would we do in 2018's budget, or actually 2019's budget, which will be the first thing on our plate in early 2017, because our fiscal year, for most people out there that say, wow, how far are they working ahead? July is our fiscal year. So, for our city. So we will be working on that next budget early in 2018 or 2019. And a lot of those things kick off with the ability to pay and stepping forward to pay by all the models that we were given. So a lot to do in early next year, no matter which option that we pick. And then, of course, the capital improvements plan did much more than just schools. Okay, it had the city needs on the bottom. So as I talked, I want to address the entire top block, what I call, which is, it wasn't just the middle school. There were two other big ticket items on there concerning roofs on some of our school facilities, as well as the entire bottom half of the capital improvements plan, which included fire trucks, public safety buildings, and the like. It's a high calling to get that done by next budget season and get start moving down that lane if that's what we're going to do. So I want to start this in January with that. So come back, kind of prepared, ready to rock and roll through that whole process and to get kicked off early. But I think you've answered the bell from the school board's thing. So I'm basically, unless you've got something, I was going to kind of go around the room and kind of get everybody's input.
Let's do it.
Okay. So we'll start with you, Councilman Cannella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And too, I want to extend my appreciation to school board and school board members, certainly your staff, for everything you've done. But quite frankly, we've got a lot of very important and expensive decisions we're going to be tasked with early next year. And I'm certainly in no rush to do so. I think we've got to make extremely careful decisions when we consider all options, especially in reference to the schools. But right now, that's about all I've got. But I am anxious for that off-site discussion with council and time to get some stuff done.
Would you like to go again, Jennifer?
No, I think I'm good, but thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I'm just going to echo what Chairman Cass said. Dr. Parrish and her staff did a great job providing everything to us that we asked for. Lots of times it changed every single meeting, so I really stand firm behind their decision.
Very good. Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I also think you did a super job. And a couple of things, as long as we're using the back of the middle school, as you referred to it, as a dressing room for out-of-town teams and things, I do think that we need to do a fair amount of work there. And the auditorium has always been inadequate ever since I've been aware. So I'd like for those two things to kind of stay in there and take a good look at.
Very good. Ma'am?
I just had a couple questions because being a finance person, I'm looking at the numbers a lot. Who provided the cost data for us?
The cost data came from Waller, I can't remember the rest of the architecture firm, but it was an architecture firm that actually did all of that cost estimate. And they did the actual facility study for us in 2012, 2013. So they went into the building, the whole facility study, and then what they did was gave us those estimates at that time, but now they've updated them based on just the cost of renovation and building currently.
And then that may be the answer to my next question was, I know that especially buildings that old before 85 have to have an environmental study just for possible asbestos, because that changes the cost estimates. Was that all?
Yes, that's all
accounted
part.
for
Yeah,
in
that's
there?
all accounted for in that cost. Now, clearly, what we didn't do back in 2012, 2013 is say this is exactly what we want in the building. What we said was give us a good estimate of what it would cost if we wanted to build an entire new middle school or to do these other things. So the work that Councilman Cannella talked about and Vice Mayor Freeman did too, those are the details that we've got to start to get into. But yes, that was included in there, as was the cost of leasing the trailers and demolition of the building.
Okay,
we
and then
did
my last one I think I have is option 3 and 3A, that leaves the gym at its current level.
Yes.
Right, which means if we flooded again, we would have to rebuild
Yes.
that, replace that.
That is true, although again, if we decide that we're going to do the modernization and major renovation, we could look, can we do something else with the gym? There might be some solutions to it, or we could look to, is the gym more important than other things, and could we do it within that cost? I'm not so sure we could go that far within that cost, but we just have a lot of work to do to say what we actually want done if we were in that range of modernization plus 3A, so.
Right, I guess that would be my concern is we maybe spend a little bit less money, but then how many times are we going to have to flood and replace that floor? And so what is the long-term possible cost when you start comparing these options and things like that? But thank you for all your work that you guys did on this.
Councilman Hux?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe that we should address this with a sense of urgency. This is not a new project, obviously. It's been in the talking stages ever since 2011 when Chairman Cass and I were first appointed to the school board. And I certainly agree that we don't want to be in a hurry to make a mistake. This is not a new project. The middle school is in dire need of work. And I would certainly hope that we can start to address the financial arrangements for fiscal year 2019. I'm certainly willing to support whatever it takes to do that, and I believe that your idea for an off-site retreat in January could be very productive and very interested in being involved in that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Randy, are you taking a bye as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I've talked enough. Steve, you want to come back with you? Go ahead.
I'd just like to thank council for their continued support for the board and for our schools as you work through the tough budget decisions over the next several months. I agreed with the decision not to consolidate, and I would just like to say that the board worked through the process. We asked the tough questions, we reviewed the material, and we didn't take the decision very lightly. But I do look forward to working with you as we go through the next steps.
Okay. Very good.
I also look forward to this very exciting process. We have been in this town for 2 decades, and it's been a wonderful place for our kids to grow up. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to look into working on the middle school. Mr. Freeman, I appreciate your enthusiasm for two of the very important aspects of my interest, which are the auditorium and a facility for visiting teams. I'm very proud of our football teams and all of our sports teams, and it'd be nice to have a place for them. I'm also very interested in the environmental study. Thank you for bringing that point up. That's really key too, and recognizing that the gym floor is a continual risk for flooding. I think it's something that we can look at as well, because that's just one of the realities of being in Poquoson. It's just the pluses and minuses. And Mr. Hucks, I believe you brought up the dire need of work, and thank you very much for that comment, because it's exciting to think of the changes that we can bring about.
I personally think that y'all made the right decision and went about it in a very methodical and accurate way. I was really afraid that you'd come back and say we should tear it down, and 10 years from now, when the numbers came out, we would be rebuilding something quickly. But I can remember back when I can actually remember back when I was on the school board in the dark ages. We were looking at the middle school then. And Weldon Cooper has always been very accurate with their numbers. And I think y'all definitely made the right decision. I look forward to the details that you come up with to move in the future. Thank you.
Okay, I think Judy's going to take a bye, Wayne's going to take a bye, so.
I'll just say thank you again for your support for our work. We really, I was surprised personally, I guess, with the Weldon Cooper numbers. It really started changing the whole, I think, the board's view. I think you're right, buddy. And then the cost estimates, too, were instructive. So we just thank you for your support for this process.
No problem. So Steve, I'll leave it up to you. Where to close us out here?
Well, thank you. And I just want to address a couple of things. Some of the folks who maybe were not on council when that facility study was done, I believe we presented that at length to council, and many of the things that we have talked about tonight, the environmental study, are all inclusive of that. We're not starting, as Mr. Hucks eloquently said, we're not starting from scratch on this process. We are well down the road. We just have to add some fine tuning and all to it and address some of the things that we are happy that y'all brought up, including the auditorium, the facility usage for community groups, from the football field, and the gymnasium floor flooding. So those are things that we are going to take a hard look, and we, school board, we've got to get back to work again. We knew this was a tough decision going forward, but it's the right decision, but we have a lot more work to do. And Mr. Mayor, I assume we're going to be bringing some, or giving you some numbers for the capital improvement plan, just
Absolutely.
as placeholders, I believe. And then we're going to go about our work of providing the most accurate cost estimates we can of what we would like to do based upon some guidance that you guys are probably going to give us also.
And remember, for all of us, so the council's job will be tell you how much, right? And it'll be your job to say what you do with it, right? So we will basically tell you how much we can afford, and I'll remind everybody, though we're all enamored and we want to get moving, that what we're talking about here in these options would take absolutely everything that we have, okay? And we have to factor in the city's needs as well. So it will be, but there are many, many options. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm being negative. What I am saying is that there's a way to go at this, and there's probably if Kyle's back here and can back me up from a bond referendum, I've seen us do many things, kind of like creating value over multiple years, right? So I'm not saying it all has to be in 1 year, and we're going to continue to grow. Very pleased with where we are as a city as far as what we're hearing from the assessor's office recently, what we're hearing from home sales, what we're hearing from growing ourselves out of what I've lived through since 2008, right? So growing our way out of that and then see what the future holds. I think there's a way to do most all of it, but it is going to cost all of our taxpayers money, and I don't want to shy away from that fact either. So there are implications of what we're talking about here, but very positive implications for what I consider to be the next 50 years of the city of Poquoson. So, and I think that investment is well worth it. So I think that's all I've got. And Randy, anything else in this particular session? Yes, sir. Jennifer?
I did want to mention, I should have done this during my presentation because you mentioned too the city needs. The school board, during the discussion that we had one evening, even asked what was on the city side, the bottom half, as you're calling it, of the CIP. So I was able to provide some of that. So I just want you to know, in making the consolidation decision and looking at the financing, they were also very aware of it's not just school needs, it's also city needs. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. So thank you.
One more thing. Yeah.
Okay. You have one more thing?
Yes.
Go ahead.
And I was remiss in saying this. We really considered the community's input. And at my urging, we conducted all of these work sessions in council chambers so they could be videotaped. And we, almost to the point we were begging folks to come out and give us their input. And we did receive community input. So we want to continue in that type of process with that. So the community was just so responsive to us. In fact, one of the consolidation options was input from a community member that we considered with that. So the board did a great job of getting folks and talking with folks and getting that community input that we needed. I forgot to say that earlier in my comments.
Very good. Thank you, and really appreciate you having that. But what else you got, Gary?
I just wanted to comment on Dr. Parrish's statements. It hadn't always been that way about the schools and the city, and we really appreciate the fact that it is that way now. And it's not, I mean, it is noticed. We don't overlook that. So just thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll close the work session, and we'll move on to the regular session. Oh, and good luck during budget season.